Hello, Ken Spriggs here with an epilogue to my 2001 Discovery build. I decided to go back just a little bit to do a little bit of augmenting, and I'll show you that here in a little bit. I belong to a Facebook site that is devoted to the Discovery. It's called Building the 2001-2010 Discovery, Building Tips and Tricks, and I'll put the link in the description. I also have the title of that as the second title to this video if you want to check that website out. Really cool site, a lot of great guys on there. The site is devoted, obviously, or the page I mean, devoted to building the Discovery, either the Mobius. Some people are building the Stargazer, but anything like that you're building for that. A lot of really good work being shown there. I posted a lot of my own build as well. What I want to highlight, though, and the reason that I decided to do this epilogue, is that there's a gentleman on the site by the name of Carl Darby, and he designed and is selling a fantastic 3D printed set, 3 sets actually, to really super augment the interior to the Mobius kit. It's designed to work in conjunction with the Paragraphics Photo Etch. You can also use, and I recommend using, the HDA ModelWorks decal set as well. And he has really extensive parts for the pod bay, the walls, the tanks in the back, the lab wall area to the left, which is fantastic. The roof, he has some roof sections. He has parts for the cockpit, parts for the platforms for the pods to extend them. Quite an awesome set, or 3 sets, as I said. Molded in 3D printed clear, so you can also light them. And so what I decided to do is take my command module, and it does come apart. The top comes off and the whole sphere comes off of the kit. And I'm going to replace the lab area on the left that I scratch built, and I'm going to replace the red tanks in the back as well. Quite frankly, because his parts are far superior to what I made and what I scratch built. So I really like those. I mean, honestly, if these parts were out when I built this initially, I would have used pretty much all of his parts. I would have still done some scratch building, but his workmanship is just phenomenal. And these will really super detail your Discovery if you want to get that set. So go ahead and check out that page in Facebook. I recommend it if you're building the Discovery. Post your work. Love to see it there. A lot of great guys, as I said, a lot of good builds being shown there. So, all right, well, let's go ahead and take a look at this set, and then I'll show you the parts that I'm replacing on my kit. All right. All right, and here are all 3 of the sets laid out, and I'll go over each one and show you them in a little closer detail. You have the pod bay, well, the main pod bay set, which includes the 2 wall sections on the left and the right. You have the little piping and the little circle mechanisms for the roof. You have the little floor platforms right here, the 3 there that are raised. You have 2 workbenches, one with detail, one without. And then you have the 2 compartments for the back wall with the tanks in them, the 2 large tanks and the 3 little red tanks. Okay, so that's set 1. Set 2, you have the 3 pod platforms with 3 notched pieces that go in the back that also support the rod. I'll show you that in a minute. You have the lab wall to the left side of the pod bay with a control panel with little TV screens cut out of it, which is my favorite, and a little ladder that goes down through the little tube on the right side there. And then you have the cockpit set, which has the back wall with the different raised ridges in it, a little control panel, 2-part seats, and then some more of the little raised panels that go onto the front of the cockpit on the roof. All right, so Carl has these marked on the site as the first set is $35. Set 1 and 2 together are $45. All 3 sets together are $55. And very fantastic work on these. Very well done. They're all done in clear 3D printing. So several of the parts, like the workbench or the controls up here or the wall parts, you can paint it and then you can scrape off the control part and light those from behind, which is kind of cool. Or you can just paint them over. Fantastic job on these parts. Quite honestly, if these were available when I built my Discovery initially, I would have used all of these, if not everything. Definitely the cockpit parts I would have used. It saved me a lot of time. I would have used these here. Absolutely would have used this, and I'm going to use this for my build. The tanks, of course, are quite nice. I'm going to use these ones here in my build. Probably the only thing I would not have possibly done is maybe some of the detail on the walls, only because I scratch built a lot of that myself, but quite a fantastic set. And then this set is designed to be used over top of the Paragraphics photo etch, so you have to have that as well as the main backing for it, the cockpit and the pod bay. And also, you don't have to, but you generally would want to use the HDA ModelWorks decal set as well in order to put over a lot of these to bring out the detail as well. So, okay, but let's go ahead and take a look at some of these, and then I'll show you the parts that I'm going to end up using. So, for the cockpit, this part is really nice. It allows you to paint the white sections and then paint black underneath for those inset sections, and then it's easier to paint that and apply this right over top of the photo etch. In my case, I put some styrene over it. It was a whole lot more work than I needed to. This control panel is kind of nice. Now you won't really see it that much, but it does give you something to put in front of the seats because the photo etch doesn't have anything. These little 2 panels go on the roof. Some of the padding up there. And then the seats are really nice, and they come in 2 pieces. So you have the back, which has some of the ridges in it. There's the profile. And then you have the inset cushioning, which you do in the black, which is really nice. And then this would be glued into the chair itself, which would all be white. Okay, so that's the cockpit. Now the pod bay platforms, also very nicely designed. There's a hole through the top if you want to put through some fiber optics or a light for the pod. The bottom I really like a lot. It's notched out in order to accommodate a piece of square rod. Let's see if I can get that in there and show you. Okay, so the rod just goes right into there, and it's the right size for that. And you could run wiring through this if you wanted to, or fiber optics, or just run them separately through the bottom. And they're nicely hidden underneath there, and it also gives you a nice flush look where you have the rod coming out of the back of it instead of underneath it. And then this rod also fits in these 2 grooves. So the way it's designed is that these would be attached to the 2 rods. They would go through the photo etch part with the 2 holes provided, and back behind you would have this glued onto the photo etch, so the rod would meet it on the end of it, and then that's how you would extend it. So in this particular configuration, you'd use just 1 rod instead of 2, like I did on mine, where I had a smaller diameter that went inside that one. So, okay. The lab wall, which is the real reason I got this, I really like this a lot. Very tiny little screens and a little teeny hole for Hal. There's also some controls there on the flat part that are hollow underneath, so you can light those as well. And then this whole piece goes inside. So again, you can paint this all white. Actually, I'm going to paint it all black and then white, and then paint the controls just black and then glue them in place. So that helps me to keep those separate. There's the little tube for the ladder that goes up. As you can see, there's a groove in there's an opening in the back, so you can put through your fiber optic and light your little TV screens. Focus. And then this ladder, there's a hole in the top. This just goes down through there. Okay. There you go. So you can have the little ladder back in there. And the way it works too is you can put a light up here, leave this clear, put a light so that it lights up that ladder, which is really cool. So really like that a lot. And then the set one is the most extensive. You have, for the roof, you have these little dome things with the little knobs sticking out of them, which go in the three parts on the roof. You have four little sets of three piping that you glue underneath the vents, which I use styrene for in mine. You have the three pod platforms with a little little square in the middle that you can use for the raised platforms on the floor. You have two different workbenches, control stations. One that has controls on it, and you have a hole in the bottom so you could put a light up into there. And again, as the instructions state, you can paint this black, and then you can lightly scrape off the controls to reveal the clear, and then just put a light inside of it and it'll light the whole thing. And then you have an opening in the back for the little blue TV screen. You have a little hole for the fiber optic for Hal on the top of that as well. You can also, he also has a second one which is just smooth, no control details. This one is designed to paint it white and then put the HDA Model Works decal over top of it. Basically what I did, but I used just styrene to build my own. So but this would give you the detail that you need. This is very nice. And the same thing, it has a little opening for Hal and for the blue screen. All right, so those are really nice. Then you have two of these boxes which are really nice, really nicely well done, nice and thin. And then you have the big tanks, which it's a half of a tank, but that's fine. It just goes inside, so you're just seeing the front of it like it's a full tank. Lots of nice detail on that you can put the decal over, or you can paint it. Obviously both of those go into here. And then you have the tiny little boxes for the smaller tanks, which are red. These are super tiny. So you can see why I had such a hard time making these for my own, and I was really not pleased with how they turned out. They look okay from a distance, but if you look at them close, not real happy with them. So I really like these a lot because they managed to get the three uniform sized tubes or tanks. So I definitely like this one a whole lot better. And then you have your wall sections. You have the left wall that is in front of the lab. It has some detail on it and some of the door detail, which is nice, and it's raised. It's pretty cool. Okay, so that's one whole sheet. And then you have the right side of the pod bay, the door to the maintenance area. It's kind of cool. All right. And the opening for the airlock to go in there. All right, so these are the three sets. Now, what I'm going to do is I want to use the lab area because that's my favorite. I'm going to paint that up and put some lights in it. I'm also going to use the little small red tanks right here because I like those a lot better for sure. But other than that, I'm really not going to tear apart the rest of my kit. But I did want to show these to you, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to build these parts and put them inside. I might play a little bit with one of these to put it together just to get an idea how that would look and how that would work. But same thing, I really don't want to tear apart mine, and although I would have liked these better, most of these I'm fine with as far as my own kit. But I do want to replace these other parts with these nicer ones. So, all right, so let me go ahead and start working on these and start getting some paint on them. Okay. Alright, so I got a coat of white, flat white Tamiya on the little section here for the small tanks, and there's the tanks. You can see a lot more of their shape and detail once you get some white paint on them instead of the clear. So those are pretty cool. And they're very tiny. You can see my thumb there. So you can get a lot more detail. Alright, so I'm pretty much done with these. I'm just playing with some ideas on how to get the red stripes on them, whether I'm going to mask them off and paint them, or if I'm going to use some kind of decal. I do have some decal sets from different sources, like here's some from a Bandai X-Wing fighter, and there's some red on there. That looks like it's kind of dark, so we'll see. I want something a little more brighter red, but I'll kind of play with that. Decals would be easier because I can get a much straighter line on them. So, okay. I also have a white coat over top of the black for the lab area. And I have the little black control panel in there for right now. It's not glued in place. There's the little screens. And I have the ladder painted white. I left the top of this clear with the idea that once this is on the top here, you put a you can put like a light on top of that and shine it down so it illuminates that ladder area there. Okay, yeah, so that could be glued on, and then it would give me some light like that, as you can see. There you go. Okay. Alright, so the next thing to start working on is how to get the back of these on. Get them colored and get a light positioned. Also the little how circle. I did scrape off the controls there. Let's see if I can get a light on that. You can just see them lighting through a little bit. So I scraped the paint off of the top of them so that when I put a light or some fiber optic into these little holes down at the bottom, it'll glow through those, and then I can just put some clear Tamiya's on the controls. I don't see too much of those, but just for a little bit of effect. So okay, so let me go ahead and start working on that some more, and it's coming together. Okay. All right, so I'm working on the method to color the little displays on the control panel, the little 6 TV screens. So I just took some thin clear styrene and I sanded it to frost it, and I just put some clear Tamiya paints on the backs of them. I have some blue and some green. I initially did some red, but I didn't like the way it was looking, so I kind of roughly cut that out, and I took some red paper, some red vellum paper that I have that's translucent, and I put that in place of it. That's actually going to be on the right side because this is reversed. And also on that side is going to be the little hole there for Hal, so that'll come through as a red for him as well. So, all right, and this just goes inside of there. And then the, let me put that in there and I'll show you how that's going to look. Okay, so there it is, placed inside of there. And that'll be glued into place when I'm done. And then the control panel just goes right on top of it. And like I said, these will all be secured. Okay, I just have a little light here so you can see. Okay, and it, let me take it apart, take it back a bit so you can see. The camera kind of washes it out somewhat. See if I can get a better shot of that. Okay, but you're going to see the individual screens. That looks pretty good. You're going to see little Hal on the left. Alright, so that's going to be pretty cool. And the light will be more focused once I get a light box behind it, obviously. Okay, and like I said, I'm going to have a light on top of there for the ladder to come down. Lighting that up as well. Okay. Alright, so that last shot I showed a comparison between my scratch built parts that I took out of the kit. There's my lab area. It's not terrible, especially when it's seen behind the wall and through the through that little window. And I also had this really big thick piece of plastic there, as I said, so it kind of obscured it a bit when it was through there. Likewise, my tanks, yeah, they're pretty rough, they're pretty choppy. But it's really hard to make these with some little styrene tubing. So once again, the reason why I went to the 3D printed parts, because they're certainly far superior to that. So I started getting them wired up. Here's my command sphere taken apart. Here's all the wiring in there. As you can see, I glued a piece of plexiglass on there for that window. I decided to go with that instead of the real big thick piece. And I just glued that right onto the opening from the outside. It's kind of hard to see, but if you look down inside there, you can see that I put the 3D printed tank section in there, right there in the center. Okay. And right now what I'm doing is I wired in, I already have the light that goes behind it to light it up. Let me turn that on actually with my remote control. Okay. So I already have the this backlight that goes behind the TV screens. So I wired in the one over top of the ladder. And I have another little one wired right here that I'm going to put onto the bottom of the control panels. So I added a little bit more onto this, and this one's pretty well done. I painted some silver over the little Hal part so it'll stand out a bit. I put a really thin piece of fiber optic through it and bloomed the end of it, and then I did the same on the other end, sticking out the back, so you can see that will light up. And it'll be red because it'll be coming through that back colors that I have there. I also painted a little bit more of the clear Tamiya red and blue on the controls. Let's see if we can show those up there. kind of hard to without a bright light. But that's what this extra little light's going to do. I'm going to stick that in the bottom there. I notched out the little section between them a little bit, and I'm going to put some 5-minute epoxy down into there and put that kind of in the center, a little bit more towards the right, so it picks up that blue one there on the right, just to give it a little bit of light for it. So okay, so I know it looks like a crazy chaotic mess, but it's just about done. All I have to do is glue that into the bottom of the control panel, get that glued into the lab area, and the lab area is ready to then be glued onto the back of here. And then I can just stick it all back together, tuck all the wires back in, and ready to go. So let me show you, sorry, let me show you just a little cool shot here while we're while this is all taken apart. You're not really going to see this, but peeking through the lab wall there, it's kind of hard to see with all the light on, but see the pod bay through the lab windows. So all right, so that's pretty cool. All right, and I changed the batteries out, so this is really bright. The batteries were kind of low and dim, and that's a little secret I figured out. If you want to show your lighting on camera, if you can reduce the power, especially if you have some old batteries that are running dim, so they look dimmer to the naked eye, they look normal on a camera. So before I show this all to you, I'll pop those back in again and take out the really the fresh batteries. So okay, let me get that finished up, and we'll get this all together, and we'll show a before and after. Okay. All right, and here is the completed lab area. You can see the light there on top for the ladder. I have a little light on the bottom there for the controls. If I can focus in close enough for that, but oh well. You have your little screens there. I have mostly blue. I have a red one, a green one. All right. So this is all wired in now and ready to glue it onto the back of the pod bay. So let me go ahead and get that in place, and then I'll show you the before and the after pictures for these. Okay. All right, and it's really hard to see back there, but you can see my red tanks in the back behind the spacesuits, and they're looking pretty rough. So again, another reason why I wanted to replace them with the 3D printed ones. So there's the before shot of those. The big tanks I kind of like. I'm going to leave those as they are. I think they turned out pretty well. And while we're here, there's a little shot of the back maintenance corridor. Little Dave Bowman figure there in his red spacesuit. If you can barely see him there peeking around. There he is. All right. All right, and there are the new 3D printed tanks in the back. I like those a whole lot better. It's not a major detail, but still, those are nice and neat, evenly spaced. They look really good. Okay. All right, so let's take a look at the lab area before. Okay, so here's my scratch-built lab monitors. Back there in the back, if you can see them. There we go, through the back window there. See a little bit from the side here. So it's mostly dark back there. And if you look really closely, you can see those little screens are a little rough. They're also probably a little too big as well, so that's why I'm putting in the 3D printed ones, because I do like them better. So okay, but there's a shot of before, and then I'll show you how they look afterwards. All right, and there's the lab area after. Definitely a huge improvement. The screens are the right size, they're all even. You can see some light back there in the little ladder area, which is pretty cool. There we go. Yes, definitely love this a whole lot better. That is really nice. That's a sharp little image on there. So, okay. All right, so that's going to wrap up my epilogue to my 2001 Discovery build. I highly recommend these 3D printed sets from Carl Darby. Quite excellent. As I said, if these were available when I built mine originally, I would have used them a whole lot more extensively. But I'm really happy with the way the red tanks turned out. I love the way that lab wall looks. And so I encourage you to go and visit or join the Facebook page. Once again, it's called Building the 2001-2010 Discovery Model, Building Tips and Tricks. I'll put that title again in the end, and I put the link to the site in the description. And if you're interested in getting a set of these, you can certainly check that out and contact Carl Darby on that site and get a set as well. So, all right, thanks again to all my subscribers, and keep watching.